log in to Connect, you're basically going to log in and see a view like this. Okay, so we have the class split into each module, which covers the topics that will relate to each of the exams. Module 1, the content for the first exam, for example. And this is where you'll be doing your reading prior to class and your homework associated with your reading. So if we click on these Learn Smart Readings, what we see is this adaptive textbook that takes you through and guides you through the chapter while you read. Now, there's a number of ways to go about doing this, okay? So, first it brings up the first topic we're going to cover, biology and the science of life and the characteristics of life. And essentially, there's two ways to address this. One, you can read each chapter cover to cover as thoroughly as possible, right? Some students do that. I was one of those students who felt like I had to read pretty much everything, kind of book style, left to right, right? Or you can read the highlighted areas after you go through and review the general overview of each chapter. Or, of course, you can answer the questions associated with your homework, which would be the most streamlined way to go about doing this. So, for example, you read a little, right? You start here, you learn what taxonomy is, the discipline of identifying and naming organisms. You go through and you learn about categories and classifications. This is just an example, of course, right at the beginning of the chapter. When you're ready to start answering questions, you click on this practice question, right? And there's a number of different question types. And there's a number of different ways to answer each of these questions. So, you read a question and you say, the characteristics that are shared by all living organisms include, and of course, you maybe know, well, all living organisms have the ability to respond to stimuli or the ability to adapt to changing conditions. Or maybe you didn't quite read that far yet, so you click on read about this and it brings you to the highlighted areas that cover the particular topics whose questions you're answering. Right here we see that animals are multicellular, oftentimes form tissues. We of course learn about biology being the study of life, and you can click left and right to go through these pages and learn about the levels of biological hierarchy, right? And then essentially the characteristics of living things are clarified right here in the highlighted regions that pertain to the question when you clicked read about this, right? Include the ability to acquire materials and energy, maintain an internal environment, respond to stimuli, reproduce and develop. You come back here and you try and answer this. Okay, well, living things have the ability to respond to stimuli, the ability to change over time, the ability to reproduce, maintain an internal environment. Does everything have the ability to move? Well, I know some trees that can't walk around very well, right? Many of them are organized. Some of them, communication, of course, is pretty relative here, right? And of course, they all have the ability to acquire materials and energy. And then you answer the question based on how you feel about it. Okay, do you know this? Yeah, you're pretty sure. You're not really sure. Maybe you have no idea. And this will categorize the way you answer these questions so that when you come back and you can review them before your exams, there's a way to go through, which I'll show you, that you can also easily figure out, that categorizes how you answered each of these questions so you can come back and review the things that you weren't too sure of, right? So here, I said I was pretty sure, right? I'm a little familiar with these kinds of things. And then you just click OK, and it brings you to the next question. True or false? Organization is a characteristic shared by all living things. You know, that's pretty true, right? But maybe you're not really sure of that, so you click unsure. So even though you have the correct answer, you're getting credit for these questions. You wrote unsure, or you selected unsure, which categorized how you answered that question, and when you go back and review before the exam, you can go back and review the questions that you had no idea or unsure about, okay? Now another thing I'd like to bring your attention to is how many items you have left pertaining to this chapter. So you can come down here and you see you have 26 items left, so you have 26 questions to answer pertaining to this particular question or pertaining to this particular chapter, and that's just to give you a brief overview of the things we're going to be discussing in class. In the beginning, it will seem really not that necessary, but as we cover more challenging topics, it will definitely make a lot of sense to familiarize yourself with this material before we go over it in class, so that you're not simply struggling with all the new terminology and all the new concepts, etc. So you click OK, right? So I'll go through these, and then I'll just show you what it's like eventually once you finish one of these modules. Now, if you click on essentially that you have no idea, it will show you the correct answer here, right? What's the most basic unit of life? Maybe you didn't know it was the cell, right? Maybe you forgot to go read about it. Maybe you were unsure. It will show you what it is, but it doesn't count towards the items that you have remaining. So that's something really important to consider, right? Now, once you finish all of the questions for a particular chapter, you'll get this page that says, congratulations, you've just completed Chapter 1 Biology, the Science of Life. Your work has been saved, and you can go back to your assignments where it will show you that you're done with your Learn Smart Reading for Chapter 1. Now that you've finished that, you can access your Chapter 1 homework, which is really simple. It's just 3 or 4 questions, usually drag and drop, filling out charts and so forth. Just like you did in the Smart Book, a little more interactive for those particular questions. So when you click on your homework, usually it will bring you to questions that look something like this, right? And you're just responsible for dragging and dropping or selecting all that apply. So just to show you, really simple and straightforward, right here we're looking at biological organization that starts off with things like small molecules, right? Progresses to large molecules, and then we have cells, and then we have tissues, and then organs, and then entire organ systems, and then of course those form complex organisms. You can score this question afterwards, and it will show you how well you did here. You got 4 out of 4 total possible points, just as a random example. And for your first couple of homeworks, I'll allow you to do multiple submissions. Usually you only get 2 chances at each question while you go through this. Now, one last thing, once you've completed your homeworks and your Learn Smart readings by the particular dates that they are due on your topic schedule, one thing you can do is come back and review some of the material that you've completed, maybe preparing for an exam, maybe just going through weekly, to try and anticipate or review how well you did on a particular topic. So, that brings us to our table of contents under our Learn Smart textbook. So, if we go through and we look at our current learning status under the Reports tab beneath Table of Contents, in your Learn Smart book, it will show you that you've completed 100%, and then you have no time remaining. And for your remaining topics, it shows you how many questions you have to answer, approximately how much time it will take you if you're actually familiar with this material, and so forth. Another thing you can do is go through and look at your topic scores, right? So I'm looking at this sample for the student view. Essentially here, maybe it took you 10 minutes to do it, maybe you missed a couple and you got about 90% correct. You need about 70% correct of the total questions, which is why it will re-prompt you with some of the questions if you miss them periodically. In fact, if you miss a lot of questions, this lady in the bottom left-hand corner will pop up and fuss at you and tell you to go back and read some before you try to rush through your homework. But in any case, it will show you how many questions you got, how much time it took you to do it, and your overall average. And you can go back and review things like missed questions as well according to topics. Maybe you missed a few random questions and you go, oh, I need to review these. And also how those pertain to particular learning outcomes, which is just a way McGraw-Hill groups these topics, right? Maybe you have a hard time recalling the definition of something, or you don't understand comparing theory of principles or law. Maybe you have a hard time recalling the definition of another word. Maybe you have a hard time discriminating among levels of organization. This is just a review based on how you answered the questions in your Learn Smart book, right? And it will also show you how you answered those questions. Maybe you didn't know the answer at all, and you said you didn't know the answer at all about 20% of the time, just to kind of give you a really good idea on how well you need to review a particular chapter, right?